originally, that this timing issue wouldn't be a problem. But this was a problem created in the legislation by the governor and the majority party, forcing us to file in the Ohio Supreme Court within a 60-day period, which was then thrown out of court and put us in the position of having to file in common pleas court. So I understand the logistical questions that we're getting here, but understand that this was caused by the gamesmanship in the legislation requiring us to file in the Supreme Court to begin with.
Brian, do you agree that it was within the authority of lawmakers, majority party, and the governor to privatize the liquor profits?
I have questions about the policy of privatizing the liquor profits, and I have questions about some of the legalities surrounding the use of those funds. In this instance, the biggest question I have is the way this process is working so far is how the money is being distributed to a private corporation, and then it's being called private money when its origin was a public source. That's my primary concern about it.
I'd also like to bring up that in the budget process, the Democrats in the Senate did bring forward an amendment to clarify that the dollars that would come from the liquor profits would remain as public dollars. It was the Republican majority that tabled that motion to amend to clarify that these remain public dollars. So there is an issue that remains out there that may be litigated at some point in the future.
Does your case at all get into the issue of whether or not a state agency, the Department of Commerce, can contract or be contracted by a private corporation to perform a function?
No, it does not. Again, the issue of whether a state agency can contract to perform some of its functions, we do not get involved in this particular lawsuit. What we're saying is that the structure itself, JobsOhio, is unconstitutional, so therefore anything the state does with it is illegal under the Constitution.
Do we know whether or not this has ever been done in Ohio, where a state agency has become a vendor to a private company to run the liquor, for instance, in this case, they're going to run the liquor store system for the state?
For example, the liquor stores. My mother was a manager of a state liquor store under George Voinovich. She lost her job when Governor Voinovich privatized the operation of the stores themselves and the operations of the stores. Now the liquor, the alcohol on the shelves remained within the state control, but the operation of the stores became private, and we contracted. The state does that quite a bit on many services, contracts with an outside entity to perform some type of function.
But wouldn't this be exactly the opposite, where the state would become the vendor to JobsOhio, because it would be contracted by JobsOhio to run the liquor store system?
It's an interesting thought, and I see what you're saying. I do not know the answer at this point in time.
May I add something, if I may? I wanted to, and I can make some of these available to anybody who would be interested in. This is fundamentally a conservative position. There are many members of the other party who have quietly approached me and said, I am not comfortable with the notion that the state government will be choosing winners and losers in the marketplace and deciding who's going to get state dollars for purposes of an equity investment. That's something that the private sector should do. And it's very interesting that when you look at the debates, which are all recorded from 1850, a Democratic delegate said as follows, I wish to see our state government brought back to its simple and appropriate functions to protect the rights of citizens without, quote, governing too much, end quote, and leave railroad, canal, turnpike, and other corporate associations to get along upon their own credit without any connection or partnership with the state, whatever. And then in the Constitution itself, and this is Article 8, Section 4, it says, and I'll leave out the first part of the sentence, it says, nor shall the state ever hereafter become a joint owner or stockholder in any company or association in this state or elsewhere, formed for any purpose, whatever. And I actually had to show my 3 daughters that portion of the Constitution because they didn't believe me when I said, no, the Constitution uses the word whatever. And there it is, but it's pretty plain. It's pretty plain.
Republicans are probably going to respond to this by saying you folks are anti-job creation. What do you say to that?
If you're going to work in the public realm, you've got to get it right. The details are important. The Constitution means what it says. You can't simply disregard it. They've known these provisions were there, and frankly, proceeding with this legislation without conforming to the strictures of the Ohio Constitution was reckless. They've had plenty of opportunities to get this right. We've held our hand out, offered to work with them on these issues quietly. That hasn't been taken up, so it's important to get it right, and they haven't so far. It's been a very sloppy piece of legislation that's been cleaned up piece by piece by piece, but we still have a couple major pieces to go.
I would add, I believe this legislation actually gets rid of over 200 jobs. I believe it's 211 jobs that this legislation eliminates. But folks, a job is a job. In addition to that, by proceeding in this manner, knowing that this case is out there and that it needs to be decided, they themselves have created the confusion through both the drafting of the legislation forcing us to file in the Supreme Court, and now by proceeding while they know that this case is going to continue to move forward. But having said that, we do have a Department of Development. I know other states have actually closed up similar shops like in Florida and continue to operate through their departments of development, and there's no reason they can't go forward creating jobs in a manner that is efficient,